On today's episode of WatchJRGo, we're back in my shop with this giant pewter-colored brick, and it's broken. Well, we knew that from the beginning, but today we're gonna get into it. What is going on, guys? I am WatchJRGo, and today, like I said, we are back with my 2003 Hummer H2, the first year of Hummer production. And the day I picked it up, it had a terrible belt squeak, and I thought it was going to be the spring tensioner, because that's the one I normally see failing, so I put a different spring tensioner on it, one that I know is good and doesn't squeak one bit. And I'm gonna start it up for you right now so you can hear what it sounds like. Obviously, you could also hear that it has the standard LS exhaust leak over here on the driver's side, the very rear exhaust bolt. It's always broken, and they make a little thing that you put in there. It's basically a 90-degree L bracket. You bolt it to the back of the head, and then you run this bolt in, and it just shoves the head back on without having to replace that bolt, because that's usually a very big job, very time consuming on some cars. I think especially on this one, a huge job that might require like dropping the engine a little bit, because the engine's set back pretty far into the cabin on this thing. The firewall is a lot farther back than you would expect. But that is never fun to fix, and honestly, once it warms up, it goes away. And that's why I didn't know it had an exhaust leak. When it showed up the day we picked it up, it wasn't making a single sound, because he had just driven it 2 hours to me, and I had driven 2 hours to go get it. By the time we met in the middle, there was no noise to be heard. The belt tensioner, sure, that should have been no big deal, but that's why we're going after that problem today. Those bad belt tensioner bearings are the worst possible thing to ever have broken on your car, but also the easiest thing to fix. Driving around a car with a squealing belt tensioner or a squealing belt, something like that, failed power steering pump, it's pretty much the most embarrassing thing you could do today. You know, back in the day, you used to hear that a lot while you were sitting at stoplights and stuff like that, but now cars are in such good shape and people would lose their minds if they ever heard that on their car. It just gets fixed. So like I said, it's pretty uncommon to find vehicles with bad belt tensioners these days. So let's get under the hood and do a little sleuthing here. We got to figure out what's going on with this thing. I got to get back inside and actually open the hood and get under there with a stethoscope and figure out which bearing is bad, because it's clearly not that top spring tensioner, the easiest one you could possibly replace. Here we go. There's those springs I was talking about. Even if you fling this hood open, it'll probably be okay. I wouldn't bet money on it, but it would probably be okay. While I was in here swapping out that other belt tensioner over on the passenger side, I spun the alternator and I spun the power steering pump. I didn't feel any bad bearings. I didn't hear any squeaking noise. So I'm really thinking that it's the tensioner on the AC compressor. So we're gonna get underneath this thing, on top of this thing. We gotta kind of jump around, figure out exactly what's squeaking, and then go from there on our replacement. The AC one's not very fun because you have to remove the main accessory drive belt, and then the AC one sits behind that. So it's a bit of a process. Not a bad one, but on this, it's not great either. If you don't have E-fans, there's only 3 inches between the belt and the fan shroud and the fan, even less to the fan. So there's really no place to get your hands, and it's hard to get tools down in there. This is just, I'd say the H2 is a pretty bad design. It does look like you could get to the back of the head though and fix that exhaust leak. It's kind of reachable, but you have to kind of sit on top of the engine bay and reach down to get anything done. All right, guys, we're going underneath the Hummer. Eric's gonna start this thing up, and you can see that I have the belt off of the AC belt tensioner right there. I hope you can see it. It's kind of dark, but the belt tensioner is right there beside the crank pulley. Everything is soaked in oil. Let's get some more light. All right, go for it and be ready to shut it off. Go it. Well, we ruled out the AC completely. I will say, the tensioner pulley on the AC did sound kind of bad. I'm gonna give it a spin for you guys. Go in here and do an Oprah spin free. That is one noisy bearing, but that's not the squeak. Scott is climbing in the Hummer. He's gonna start this thing up for us, guys. I have completely removed the belt now because obviously we've ruled out the AC system, and all we really have left is, I mean, I've put the stethoscope on here and listened to every single thing except the water pump. Hopefully it's not the water pump. There's no play in it.
It's brand new.
I know, the water pump is brand new, clearly. So fire it up, Scott. It can't be the belt, though. It's never the belt.
Sprayed it with
They did spray it.
and once they spray it, they're ruined.
You're not wrong.
It's covered in whatever that stuff is.
All right, here's my game plan. I'm gonna go out to the other truck. That belt, feel how sticky the belt is.
Yeah, that's how I knew they sprayed it.
But I don't see it being the squeak.
It's not terrible, but it's also not good.
Shut her down, Scott. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, I think once you hit these with belt dressing, they're just toast. Whoever says belt dressing is good is a lie.
No, everyone knows that's true. What's funny is even this pulley is sticky. It's covered in rubbery goo.
I think they just sprayed it with
Maybe
belt.
I should brake clean that pulley before we do this, but
I think what happened was the water pump went out, was
Listen.
squeaking.
not bad. Not bad.
Yeah.
Not bad. I don't think it's bad.
I got one. There's two in the back of that truck out there.
And then the power steering pump, you really can't spin that fast.
Yeah.
You can,
It's fine.
is there play in it? Can you wiggle it? I don't think there's any play. Visually, it looked pretty good. But, all right. Well, I'm gonna brake clean these two then. So we went and got a known good belt, at least one that wasn't squeaking before. Same size, it's back on the engine. We are ready for Scott to start this thing up here and to see if we still have a squeak. I also took some brake clean and I sprayed down all the idlers and used a screwdriver to clean any of the grooves on the pulleys. So let's see if we've got it. All right, Vortec, don't let me down. All right, you can shut it off. All right, Eric, you win.
Everybody gets one.
Everybody gets one, and once in a while, it's a belt.
Well, it's probably perfectly fine, but what I think happened was the water pump failed.
And they sprayed it with this
They sprayed it, then replaced the water pump, threw the belt back on, and just gave up.
That's
Pretty
it.
normal, I feel like.
Pretty normal. And somebody put an alternator on it too. But all right, well, we have fixed the most annoying yet easiest to fix problem you could have on your car. Well, we found more exciting news as I took this thing apart, guys. There was a MAF code, and I was like, well, it's got a new MAF in it. Clearly had just been replaced. I bet that was never the problem. I would guess the problem is the part where you can see light through the plastic on the intake there. That makes a lot more sense than a bad MAF. So this thing has just kind of ripped itself apart over the years, and that's why it doesn't seal correctly and it's having trouble metering the air going into the engine. Obviously, for now, we're gonna put that back and we'll just try to push it down to where it sort of seals up, but I know how to fix the problem in the future. We just need to get a new rubber coupler there or a big silicone one that slides over a little bit farther and clamps down. One problem down, I've got the air intake back on. We've got the hood closed, all locked up. Now it's time to get back underneath because I had to get underneath this truck with my stethoscope and put on this gigantic skid plate. And this skid plate weighs more than you guys could imagine. It's also held on by some of the biggest bolts I've ever seen on a skid plate. 15 millimeter bolt heads, I mean big old grade 8 bolts. You could probably smash into some pretty serious rocks with this thing, and the Hummer probably wouldn't flinch one bit. So I'm gonna crawl back underneath this thing, shoot these bolts back in, and then we can take the H2 for a test drive. Here we go, it's time to see. We might have an exhaust leak, but it's a million times better. Let's go drive this thing. Well, the Hummer has gone from embarrassing and unbearable to drive to something that is actually kind of fun to drive around, other than the fact that, you know, the whole back end sounds like it's falling apart when you hit a bump. Here you go. That wasn't too bad. That was a pretty small bump. But it was a quick, easy fix. Wouldn't have cost much. You know, what's that belt? $36 or something like that. And of course, it's always good to change your accessory belts anyway, so you don't end up stranded on the side of the road with no water pump or no alternator. That is a bad day. So, like I said, one of the easiest things to fix on your car, but the worst thing that could ever break. Bearings on the idlers, tensioners, and on this one, somehow, just a belt that was sticky. That is it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to head on over to shop WatchJRGo.com for cool shirts, not like this. And please like, share, subscribe, do whatever you want to do, and I will talk to you next time. You can hear this thing rattling outside. It's just not built very well. I mean, maybe it was built very well 300,000 miles ago, but Today it's kind of all falling apart. I don't know, all the bolts backed off or something. But at least I can take it through a drive-through now and people aren't gonna be upset, or I won't be upset. I gotta go clear the codes again because I unplugged the map and had Scott start it 3 times.